y'all, it's Amanda. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk all about the top 5 most used Pokemon in the Series 11 metagame. It's been over a month since the Series 11 metagame started for Sword and Shield VGC, so I thought now would be a good time, now that the meta has settled out a little bit, to talk about the top 5 Pokemon, how they're most commonly used, what their sets are, and how I think they could most easily be countered. So stick around. So right now, at this moment, the 5th most used Pokemon in the Series 11 meta with 25.85% usage is Thundurus. Now, Thundurus is really interesting because in past metas, it's almost always been run with the Defiant ability. And the Defiant ability raises its attack 2 stages if any of its other stats or even attack has been lowered. So let's say I'm using Incineroar or Landorus-T on my team. I may be forced to not bring those Pokemon in a matchup against Thundurus out of the fear that my Intimidate will raise Thundurus's attack and make it even more dangerous than it already is. Another thing that Defiant does is kind of make you a little bit cautious about using certain Dynamax moves, like Max Strike, for example, which lower opposing Pokemon stats, because again, that will also trigger a Defiant boost and raise Thundurus's attack stat by +2. Something else to keep in mind as well is that in this meta, this time around for Series 11, just the threat of a Defiant ability is really enough to have Thundurus do its job in making the opposing team maybe not bring their Intimidate Pokemon or use their stat-lowering moves. And so a lot of people will actually opt to use the Prankster ability on Thundurus instead of Defiant to sort of surprise the other team and get some attacks off that maybe you weren't expecting to have. So for the Defiant stats, some of the most common attacks are Fly, Wild Charge, and Superpower. All of these are great Dynamax moves in addition to being fantastic moves in general. Stab, Fly, Max Airstream, again, is super duper helpful, and you'll see a little bit of a trend that having access to Stab, Max Airstream is very beneficial for speed control as well as damage. And typically, the Defiant set will also run Assault Vest as the item. And then for the Prankster set, they'll run moves like Eerie Impulse, which lowers special attack, or Thunder Wave, which will lower an opposing Pokemon's speed through paralysis. And that set, the Prankster set, of course, can't use Assault Vest, so it'll typically be running something like Citrus Berry. Now, because Thundurus is a flying type, it's actually immune to ground type, which is the only weakness that its electric typing gives it. So instead, to counter Pokemon like Thundurus, you'll need to attack the flying type weaknesses. Things like Ice or Rock will be very helpful for you. I personally love Galarian Darmanitan as a counter to a lot of the flying type Pokemon common in the meta right now, specifically because that ability, Guerrilla Tactics, gives it the effect of a choice band while also allowing you to add another item to it, whether that be an actual choice band to bring its attack stat even farther up, or a choice scarf so that you can get that 1.5 times boost on both attack and speed. And the 4th most commonly used Pokemon in the Series 11 meta right now is Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl has a usage of 27%. 27% of teams are running Grimmsnarl. And the thing about Grimmsnarl is it's so versatile. You can kind of see there's a ton of moves that it can run. It's really just all over the place, and it's very difficult to guess what a Grimmsnarl is going to do. So that gives you a lot of momentum if you can catch your opponent by surprise and do something they don't expect you to do. So the most common sets on Grimmsnarls are moves like Light Screen and Reflect and Spirit Break. And then that 4th move is really a mystery. There's a bunch of moves that have sort of the same usage for that 4th move slot. So things like Thunder Wave, Scary Face, Fake Tears, Fake Out. All of these are possible from Grimmsnarl, and they're all about equal in terms of which is most commonly used. Typically, the item run on Grimmsnarl is going to be Light Clay to extend the duration of those Light Screen and Reflect turns, but you can also see things like Trick plus Lagging Tail or Full Instance, and that can help for speed control as well. And when we talk about counters to a Pokemon like Grimmsnarl, we're really talking about things like Steel type poison type, things that fairy typing is really weak to, and Zacian can be a very good counter to that. You can also use some fake out pressure in conjunction with a Pokemon like Zacian to help you really stop that Grimmsnarl in its tracks before it gets a chance to do anything, because remember that Grimmsnarl's ability is Prankster. So all of those support moves like Light Screen, Reflect, T-Wave, Fake Tears, they all have a +1 priority, so your Zacian will be vulnerable until it gets a chance to take the Grimmsnarl out. So you can use something like Fake Out to stop that Grimm in its tracks, and then use Zacian to take it out so you don't have to worry about it on turn 2. And of course, the third most used Pokemon in the Series 11 meta, our boy LANDORUS-T, with about 37% usage. Now, LANDORUS-T has really good typing. It has access to Stab Max Airstream through that Fly. It has access to Stab Max Quake through Earthquake to kind of bulk up its special defense a little bit. And it has access to Rock Slide, which will help it even more against opposing flying types. So, of course, its ability is Intimidate. So, not only can it neuter opposing physical attackers pretty easily by cycling out Intimidates, but you can also Dynamax it and get that Max Quake down and also boost its special defense for opposing special attackers as well. Typically, the fourth move used on Landorus, depending on the item, will be something like Swords Dance or Protect or even U-Turn. So if you're running an Assault Vest Landorus, U-Turn is going to be that fourth move. Otherwise, it will probably be something like Swords Dance or Protect, combined with maybe a Lumberry to help against opposing Sleep or Paralysis, or Life Orb to help deal even more damage. Common counters for Landorus-T, of course, Landorus has a 4x ice weakness, so any ice type Pokemon that's faster than it will pretty much almost always knock it out, unless it's a very weak ice move or the Landorus has bulked up quite considerably. So again, I like to use my Galarian Darmanitan for that. Galarian Darmanitan does outspeed Landorus-T naturally. You don't even need the Choice Scarf for that. And it's an ice type, and Icicle Crash can hit very hard in addition to that 4x weakness. Other common counters would be something like competitive Milotic. So because of that ground typing, Landorus is actually weak to water type moves. So you could use something like maybe Urshifu Rapid Strike form because that outspeeds Landorus. Or if you really just don't want that Landorus to come onto the field at all, you can try to warn it away with something like a competitive Milotic on its team. And this works similar to the way that Defiant Thundurus works, where competitive, when any of Milotic's stats are lowered, its special attack is increased by 2 stages. So when Landorus-T's Intimidate comes onto the field, Milotic gets its special attack doubled, and then it can use its Stab Water type moves to just take it out, no problem. Keep in mind also that Milotic typically runs Ice type coverage, so something like Ice Beam is also available to it to take advantage of Landorus-T's 4x weakness. And, of course, the number 2 most used Pokemon in the Series 11 metagame is the only restricted Pokemon in the top 5. It's ZACIAN-CROWNED. Zacian is by far the most popular restricted in restricted type formats, and that's really because not only is it incredibly strong, it's incredibly fast, it also doesn't Dynamax. So not only do you not have to use your Dynamax slot on your restricted Pokemon, but your restricted Pokemon can still do a ton of damage even while not Dynamaxed, especially to opposing Dynamax Pokemon with that Behemoth Blade. Other moves in addition to Behemoth Blade are things like Protect, Substitute, and Sacred Sword, of course. The item is always going to be Rested Sword, and the ability is always going to be Intrepid Sword, so you don't have to worry about what Zacian is going to do. Zacian's not really much of a surprise. It typically runs this set in almost every case. Now, Zacian is very fast and very strong. It's kind of bulky, but it's not incredibly so. It can be one hit by certain super effective moves, so things like a Flare Blitz from Incineroar or even a Max Quake from a Landorus can really be helpful here. Additionally, both Incineroar and Landorus have the ability Intimidate, so you can use that to help knock down Zacian's ability to deal damage to your team with its physical attacks. And finally, I think we all could guess what the number 1 used Pokemon in the Series 11 meta was. It's Incineroar. Incineroar is on 45% of teams in the Series 11 meta. It's a monster, and there's a good reason for that, okay? It's very bulky, it's got a great set of moves, both attacking and support moves, and its ability Intimidate is really useful to help protect your team from opposing physical attackers. So the most common set you're going to see on a Pokemon like Incineroar is Fake Out, Flare Blitz. Parting Shot also lets you to reduce damage from opposing special attackers as well as physical attackers. And then you have things like Darkest Lariat or Snarl, which again, Snarl is going to help you reduce damage from opposing special attackers, not just the physical attackers that are affected by your Intimidate ability. And then, of course, since Incineroar is such a bulky Pokemon, the types of items you're going to see on it are things like Citrus Berry or some other Healing Berry or Assault Vest. And now we can really kind of see why Pokemon like Zacian and LANDORUS-T are so high up in the usage, and it's because they counter the most popular Pokemon in the meta very well. So Incineroar is weak to fighting type moves, like Zacian's Sacred Sword or Close Combat, and it's also weak to both ground and rock type moves. So LANDORUS-T can come in, give it a max Quake, and almost always OHKO and Incineroar, depending on whether or not it has already taken an Intimidate from Incineroar. Okay, so that was just a super quick overview of the top 5 Pokemon in the Series 11 meta. Let me know down below in the comments what your thoughts are on these Pokemon and how you like to counter them. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more like it. I'll see y'all later. Bye!